We're back here in the Next Panel podcast in the wake of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Black Panther 2 coming out about a week and a half ago a week ago from when we're speaking right now, but almost 2 weeks from when this comes out. One of the more anticipated releases of the year as we wind down Phase 4. We won't talk about Phase 4 too much here today just because I think we'll probably save that for another time because there's a lot that can be said. I know, Phil, you have a lot of opinions on it, most of which I agree with, which we'll talk about at a later date, but this kind of closes it out from a movie standpoint because I know we still have the Christmas special that comes out in a couple of weeks. But as far as the movies go, this was it. And I thought it was a great way to go out as we head into Phase 5. Chris, Phil, you guys are back here on the show. Chris, what's going on, man? On the Twitter machine, BR_doctor. I know we just spoke Black Adam. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. I definitely liked this movie more than Black Adam, that's for sure.
I would agree with that. I enjoyed Black Adam. This was...
No, I did too, but this one was just way better.
No, I completely agree. Phil, you're on the Twitter machine at PhilDL616. What's going on, Phil?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So let's talk Black Panther here. Like I said, this was a while in the making and got delayed a bunch. I know it was supposed to be out a while ago, and there was a lot of rumors whether it was even going to be made. The cool thing about, first of all, even talking about this was that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure, I think the first time, Phil, we got you here on the show to talk about anything Marvel, DC, whatever, was Black Panther 1 2 years ago. So I think we've gone full circle here and talking Black Panther 2 here with you.
Yeah, we recorded that the day after Chadwick passed away.
Yes, exactly. And that was, we were already planning on doing it. Yeah, which is fucking wild because we were already setting it up a while before that, and then it happened, and we're like, holy shit. And then I watched it. Like,
so sad.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Now, I would have to go back and listen to it to see what we said as far as where they go from there and whether they recast. I'm surprised people even thought that was an idea. I mean, I haven't listened to the whole thing. I've heard excerpts, but there's a great, I think it's Ryan Coogler's podcast. Isn't like they did an episode with him talking about the first movie, Chadwick's passing, whatever, making this one. And from what I've heard about it and what I've heard from it, it's really, really good. But I don't think recasting was ever like an actual idea they had, like that they seriously considered. I'm surprised fans even thought about that because I think that would have been silly. What they did here as far as the post-credit scene and setting up the Sun storyline, I thought was awesome. But yeah, a lot to get into here. Chris, I'll start with you. Just kind of give me your overall thoughts on Black Panther, Wakanda Forever as we get into the nitty-gritty here.
I thought it was a great movie. I'm not going to say that it's my favorite Marvel movie, but like I actually feel like this one sort of stands on its own better than a lot of them. Like, even though it is connected to the rest of the MCU and it did a little bit of setting up for future things like Riri Williams, it felt like a very dedicated story that wasn't all over the place. Like, they were like, this is what we're focusing on. It's Wakanda, it's Shuri's story, Okoye, Nakia, like these characters. And then everything else going on outside of that in the MCU is a little inconsequential. And I actually kind of liked that because it allowed them to really focus on these characters, which I remember during that original podcast, this is exactly what I said I wanted Black Panther 2 to be. Mm-hmm. The women of Wakanda. Like, they had all these strong characters built up in that first movie, and we got to see them take center stage in this movie, and that made me very happy because it didn't really feel like any one character's movie. Mm-hmm. It felt like an ensemble story, and I think they did a good job balancing all of them.
Yeah, they had a great cast there, and a lot of the same people from the first film, obviously, and everyone had their own like motivations and story and everything else. But I agree. I like the fact that it wasn't focused on one person. I'm not even really sure what I expected it to be, but what they did was awesome. With Shuri, and it wasn't just her, but really just everyone on that side of the fence, and even Namor, obviously, too. Namor was phenomenal, arguably even one of the best characters, if not the best character in the entire movie. I thought he was excellent, not knowing much about him myself beyond what we either talked about or just the general basics of what was discussed here in the movie. But I thought the actor himself playing that role was amazing. But Phil, what about you? What were your overall takeaways from Wakanda Forever?
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to go into this with an open mind. Mm-hmm. I wasn't one of those people that's like, recast, and if you don't recast, I don't want the movie. I trusted Coogler enough to give us a good movie because, big part of the success of the first movie was Ryan Coogler's vision. And so I was pretty much along for the ride with whatever movie he wanted to do, whatever story he wanted to tell. And I think that this movie may be better than the first one in a lot of ways. I think the story they told is a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And I think, I don't know, I think it's just so much to it that hits home, whether it be the story they're telling about grief, just the very real tribute they have in there to Chadwick, the way that they interconnected a lot of stuff from the first movie and kind of progressed the storyline. They didn't just kind of go, okay, well, Chadwick's gone, so let's make this whole movie about, setting up something else. No, I feel like they advanced even T'Challa's story moving forward in a lot of ways.
Yeah, what I thought was cool about this movie, too, especially was, like you mentioned, the story and it just being a better story. I think including the first one, and I'm sure we talked about this when we reviewed it 2 years ago, it's interesting because unlike, it doesn't follow the same formula as most MCU movies. It's not like good versus evil and stuff like that because, Killmonger had, like Thanos is regarded as one of, if not the best MCU villain because he had a lot of great points and it wasn't, he had that human side to him as well. And seeing him back for this movie, which I don't think was, unless you saw the movie on like Saturday, Sunday, late Friday. It might have been spoiled for you on Twitter. I don't know if that was ever actually confirmed going into it that he was going to be in it, unless I just missed the leak on like Tuesday or Monday, which I'm glad I didn't see, because I thought seeing him again was great. The role that he played was awesome. And again, it's not just good versus evil, because even Namor had some, real reasons for why he was doing what he was doing, going to war with, the United States and Wakanda's role in it, Wakanda being blamed for it. A lot of real issues that we face in everyday life. So I thought that was probably one of the strongest parts in the movie, and I thought it was just fantastic overall. So as far as the story goes, Chris, anything specifically about it that stood out to you that you liked, didn't like, and whatnot?
Well, I will say that I don't care that they changed Namor's origin from the comics at all. Namor is a cool character, but he's not one that I'm super invested in, and he's not one that I think a lot of people really are like, oh, this one detail from his origin has to be there. Like, I don't care that he's not running Atlantis and they named it something else. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest success of this movie is that they made those dumb little wings on his feet not look as dumb as I thought they would.
Yeah, the idea of it sounded stupid, but it came across really well in execution. I agree.
And when Shuri ripped one of them off, like, oh my God, that was so low-key brutal. Like, I almost felt the pain of that in my foot.
Yeah, no, because they built it up and they talked about it so much. When she ripped it off, it was like an impactful moment. The violence in this movie, I don't know about you guys, was actually top notch and like much more violent than I thought it was. Maybe it was just the implied violence. It wasn't like we saw people getting decapitated, but like that first scene, not the first scene, because like when they recap, T'Challa's passing, which was very powerful and emotional and whatnot, but that scene on the boat when we're first introduced to Namor, and you see everyone like listen to the siren sound, whatever it was called, and everyone just kind of jumps off, and then like everyone gets killed, and like they try to shoot him, Namor's people, and they take the blow, and even later on when they get hit with the vibranium spear by Okoye, they all survive. I mean, they're not invincible because we see that other woman get killed later on via the vibranium blast or whatever it was. But no, that was pretty. It was pretty violent, and then like Shuri in the end gets like speared right through her stomach. It was pretty crazy, dude. And
Okoye was straight up trying to kill those dudes on the bridge and did, and then they just got back up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, that was just wild.
Not a lot of blood, but a lot more death or implied death than what we would typically get in a movie like this. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah. I was just going to say, Okoye almost getting her shoulder ripped out of its socket and then just pushing it back in. Crazy.
Dude, oh my God, Denai Guerrera, like, she's so fucking good. I really hope they use her in more Marvel stuff as Okoye. Like, don't they have a Dora Milaje show planned? Like, that needs to be centered around her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of like a World of Wakanda show right now, and they're probably going to rebrand to something else. If I had to guess, I think it's going to be like a Midnight Angels show or something like that.
I just think it should be based around her because that character rules.
Yeah, I feel like they set up her and the other Dora Milaje that took on the Midnight Angel suit as well. I feel like they set her up for a reason. They didn't give her a lot of screen time, but they set her up. So I'm assuming the show is going to be about the two of them. But yeah, this I feel like the fight between Namor and Shuri, I was sitting there the whole time. Like that was the closest I've ever felt to watching the final fight in the first Spider-Man movie, where Green Goblin is just beating the snot out of Peter, and I was like, "Is he gonna win this fight? Is he gonna die?"
Yeah.
And so yeah, the whole time I was watching that fight, I was like, "Yo, Shuri could really lose."
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I did not expect the Queen to die after they had already established that T'Challa passed.
Yeah, that was heavy. Yeah.
They really took everything from Shuri to establish her pain and anger well.
Yeah, I thought the story they told with Shuri was very good. Like, I feel like it would have been tough to come into this and kind of make it an origin movie. But that's the kind of genius of this movie is that Coogler not only kind of did a origin story with her, but he advanced the plot line with T'Challa. He advanced all the stuff with Killmonger as well. Like right after I saw it on Thursday night, I was thinking about it Friday morning, and I was like, the movie begins the exact same way. She starts with praying to Bass in the same way that Kid Killmonger is at the beginning of the first movie, telling his dad to tell him a story, and that goes all the way into what we find out later is where his dad dies in the apartment. And so everything in the movie leading up to Ramonda dying in the throne room is the setup when she goes to the ancestral plane to see Killmonger in the exact same way that he goes to the ancestral plane when he becomes Black Panther.
Yeah. I thought that was really good. No, the parallel of her seeing him and not like... was there a fear among people? Because I had seen some videos on the movie and people were like, oh, I'm so glad they didn't do a CGI T'Challa. Well, like, was that actually... Did people actually think that was going to happen?
I could see people thinking it would have happened in the ancestral planes. I'm glad they didn't do that either.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
I think that was the best way to bring Killmonger back in and have him do a cameo. And, just having her story built around her being a woman of science and not being spiritual and not caring about traditions the same way the Killmonger did. And her entire drive to be Black Panther was based off of revenge like his. So it made sense.
Yeah, I didn't even really think about the whole science versus tradition and religion thing. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm sure they said that and I just missed it. But no, that made a lot of sense because they didn't... Or go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So at the beginning, she prays to Bass, and that's basically the defining moment moving forward. Because, I mean, in the first movie, she didn't believe in tradition like that either. But the start of the movie is her praying to Bass, and it looks like he just left her hanging because T'Challa just died anyway.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't even really think about that. That makes a lot of sense now that you mention that.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes all the way into the scene with her, Ramonda, where Ramonda's telling her, you have to burn your funeral clothes because it's tradition. Yeah. And she's just like, I don't care about any of that. And, just all of her response to everything that everyone's trying to do to tell her, like, it's what you're supposed to do. And, you're supposed to believe in this. You're supposed to believe in that. And she's just kind of like, no, I'm a woman of science. Even the stuff with vibranium, where everybody else was surprised that there's vibranium somewhere else because that's what their religion always told them, is that vibranium only existed in Wakanda. And Shuri was the only one that's kind of like, well, it's science. Like,
maybe there was more than one meteorite. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
She even explained it like the world is 70% ocean. Odds are that if there was more than one, the other one would end up in the water.
Yeah.
Right.
And it did. No, you're right.
Everybody else was just kind of like, this is like an affront to everything I believed in. Like, Okoye was very taken back by it, and Shuri was just like, no, this kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I know that was the expected route they would take as far as her, donning the Black Panther suit, and she did. And she did even a better job than I thought she would in the role because, especially not being the main character in the first film, people may have found it unbelievable that she would be the next Black Panther. But the way they told her story in this movie, I was convinced by the end of it that she was perfect for that role. But that being said, Do you guys think that she is the permanent Black Panther going forward? Or they kind of left it open and ended where it could end up being the son, like, further down the road. He's, like, 6 years old. But, like, will she be Black Panther the next time that we see her? Or was she just satisfied doing it once and then leaving it alone? What do you guys think?
I think she's a good placeholder for now.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see someone else taking up the mantle later.
Any other ideas on who you think it might be?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they recast T'Challa later.
Yeah.
Maybe not right away, but I wouldn't be surprised if they recast him. Like, I could see them giving Coogler room to do an entire trilogy, and then if another filmmaker comes in to do another Black Panther project after that, they would recast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could be like a variant, a multiverse kind of thing.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Well, I mean, the son's name is T'Challa too, right? So is that? I mean, did they do that on purpose because they want him to be the next Black? But without saying that it was the original T'Challa, so it's the son, but he has the same name, so he's basically Black Panther anyway. Do you think that's why they did that? Yeah, I mean,
if the MCU is still here in 15 years, and it probably will be,
yeah.
Then yeah, we could get a 20-year-old T'Challa Jr. playing the new Black Panther. But there is also another possibility that I saw mentioned in an article. It seems like Shuri almost sort of is allowing M'Baku to take over.
Yeah, so he said he was challenging for it, and then we didn't see him after that. So does that mean he's the new, like, king or leader of Wakanda, or what is his role now?
I mean, it's a little unclear because they didn't show that she was there to accept the challenge.
Yeah, no, she wasn't there at that point,
and it makes, so, like, there was an announcement in the lead up to this where they're like, oh, the actor playing M'Baku was given a big pay raise and given more screen time and more to do to set up for things in the future. So I could actually see a world where M'Baku plays a version of the Black Panther for a movie just as a way to use that character again if they don't use Shuri. But
yeah, I read that
they already have so many other characters in this Wakanda story that they can build from, that the Black Panther isn't the end-all be-all. Like Okoye, Nakia, these are characters you can keep expanding.
I read that as he's going to take over as king. I didn't read that as he was going to take over the mantle, because I think her not being there is an excuse for her to say, well, you never beat me for the mantle of Black Panther, so I'm still Black Panther. But I think at this point he has claim to the throne if he wants to take it.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's where they're going with it, because, I mean, even when we first see T'Challa as Black Panther, he wasn't king yet. His dad was still king, but he was just Black Panther.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. No, he was great in this movie, too, as much as he was in the first one. Everyone played a great role, as you guys mentioned earlier, including, I'm surprised we haven't mentioned her yet, Riri Williams as Ironheart. Which, did they call her Ironheart officially in this movie, or did they never actually call her that, right? No, they just called her Riri for most of the movie. I thought Winston Duke was great. I think the development they've done with M'Baku has been really good. It would have been really easy to just make him kind of a villain and do like throwaway stuff with him, but I think that they've made him a very complex character. I think that they took him from being an isolationist to a guy that went all the way into fighting at an Endgame and all the way back to kind of being an advisor to Shuri in this movie, and now, a guy that's trying to take the spot as King of Wakanda.
I like that they even established that he's reasonable, and he was trying to talk her out of seeking revenge. He's like, what do you think this is going to bring? It's going to bring endless war.
Yeah, he was smart.
What you want? Is that what you think your mother would want? Like, it showed that he had a good head on his shoulders. So they did a lot of good table setting for him to be a good king. Like, the first movie, like you said, Phil, like, not only is he an isolationist, but he was very antagonistic, even though he helped T'Challa. Yeah. In this movie, they did a much better job portraying him as, like, yeah, he's verbose and loud, but he's also, like, very level-headed and smart, and he knows what's best for his people to survive.
I think the idea that because I mean, even his conflict in the first movie is not a selfish conflict. His conflict with T'Challa is essentially that you're unfit to rule. I think I'm a better fit to rule. You don't care. Your sister doesn't care anything about our traditions. You're unfit because you're still grieving and you're still too young to be king. So when you get to this movie, you get more of an idea of like, yeah, he might have been right about more things than we thought in the first movie. I really like the idea in this movie as well. This is the first time that we see him don anything that is gorilla based in his armor as well. And I thought Namor punching him and smashing his original armor so that he could don the new armor later was a nice touch.
Oh my god, I was so scared for a second that punch was going to kill him. And then when they showed him struggling to breathe, I was like, okay, good.
Me too.
Because I was like, this movie is knocking off people left and right. I would not be shocked if
I was worried
M'Baku
too.
was yeah.
Yeah. No, he was great. I was really worried they might have killed him off in that in that moment as far as like a shock thing, but they didn't do that. But no, this movie did have its fair share of like surprises, not like anything super major, but we did have the surprise appearance, unless it was announced ahead of time, or not announced, but like rumored or whatever, which I didn't see personally, but Valentina Allegra de Fontaine from, she was at the end of Black Widow, as well as Falcon Winter Soldier, both of which we talked about, and this is her third appearance in the MCU. And not only that, but she was formerly married to Everett Ross. They actually used to be married at one point. So
finding that out was hilarious.
Yeah, the way they said that was funny too on the bridge, and he's like, "Oh, I forgot what the exact context was, but the way they."
She's like, she's like, if you have some time, I need to apologize for some things I said during our marriage.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
During the long car ride or whatever. Yeah, no, that was good. And she was in it more than I thought she would be. And I guess her role going forward is the head of CIA, right? Because Ross got fired. He was about to be arrested. And then he gets freed by Okoye, Midnight Angel, whatever. And yeah, so I thought her role was actually surprisingly cool, too. And it kind of sets up for whatever she does next. Probably with the Thunderbolts, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I thought they did a good job of continuing the idea of, just the remnants of colonialism, and kind of the real bad guy in this movie is the United States government.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Shuri straight up calling him her favorite colonizer.
Yeah.
That was genuinely funny.
That was great.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like they're setting up the third movie to be kind of like Wakanda in this big political strife with either America or whatever other powerhouses appear. I mean, that could set up Liberia. I don't know. And they did so much with the political side of it this time around. I can't see that not being the main theme of the third movie.
Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, I mean, they mentioned at the beginning there when they were in that, the court scene or whatever, when the officials from the U.S. government were like, yeah, you said a couple of years ago that you were willing to open your borders and you're not doing anything to help us, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, fuck you. And then in the midst of all of that, they tried to take the vibranium from them and invade or whatever, and they got their asses handed to them. And then they like show up and like, listen, consider this like a courtesy, like, don't fuck with us again, which I thought was awesome. I loved how badass they were portrayed in this movie. That was
the most badass thing we've seen Ramonda do. And Ramonda just very calmly, like, yeah, bring their people in. Like, yeah, don't let them show up on our shores again. They won't come back.
Yeah, and I like that they were like, all right, let's just at least make it the French this time so it's not always the U.S. who are the big guys.
The French.
Yeah, it took me a second to realize that because when they did show the representative from the United States, it did have United States in French in front of them.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't notice.
But it was like the French lady who was having the biggest reaction.
Yeah.
When they were brought in. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you look at it again, the guy that is which is a pretty popular actor that represented the United States, and in front of him it says États-Unis, not United States.
Oh, okay. Yeah, was he in the first movie as far as representing the government then? Because he looks familiar, unless I just remember him from something else.
No, I think you just remember him from a ton of other things.
Yeah,
like I said, he's a pretty famous actor.
I don't remember who it was.
Oh man, I can't. I'm drawing a blank on his real name. And I can't even think of his character's name either.
I don't know. Oh, but one cool thing we got in this was, did you guys recognize who was the girl in the opening scene when they were attacking the vibranium detector? She was like the CIA agent who was there kind of running it.
So I didn't recognize her, but I did hear that, as I'm sure you were about to say, that she was the voice of Black Widow from What If.
Not only that, she's the voice of Poison Ivy in Harley Quinn cartoon.
Oh, wow, okay.
That's Lake Bell. She's been in a bunch
Bell.
of stuff over the years. She's very good.
That's
I like her.
name,
She's funny.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I didn't know that was her until after the fact. I heard the Natasha, I must say Natalie, Natasha voice from What If. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool that they reused her for that, and from Harley Quinn too. That's awesome.
Yeah, the actor I'm thinking of that played the representative of the United States is Richard Schiff. He's in West Wing. He's also in what do you call it? The Rock Show on HBO, Ballers.
Oh, Ballers. Okay.
He's been in a bunch of stuff. He's been in like tons of television shows, tons of movies.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's probably where I've seen him then before. Yeah, no, it was
we do need to talk about Riri more though. Like, I was so worried that whole thing was gonna feel just very unnecessary. And in a lot of ways it was, but I actually really liked how they used her and like how quickly they made you kind of like that character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look at it on a whole, you can kind of look at it like she didn't really need to be in this movie, because it's kind of like she did all of this stuff, and then by the end of the movie, it's just like, all right, well, she was just reset where she started. She got her car back unfazed. She didn't get to keep the armor. So it was just kind of like, it was like, oh, that was kind of a fun offshoot to introduce her, but none of that stuff is going to go into her TV show because it's like it didn't happen. But I thought it was a great introduction to the character. I think the actress that plays her is really good. There was a bunch of stuff that she said and did that I popped for. Having the Chicago flag in her MIT room was great.
Didn't she even invite Shuri to a Bulls game?
She did. And I don't know if you guys realize, going to MIT with...
Yeah, with his Peter's friends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
With
none of them were like in the background or anything.
No.
But they both go to MIT now.
Yeah.
Ned and what's his girlfriend's name? God damn it, MJ. Yeah.
Oh,
Ned
MJ. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought she was great. I thought one of the better things they did with this movie, and kind of the thing that I think a lot of people have missed about Phase 4, is that one of the overarching things for Phase 4 is really showing us what is the world like without Tony Stark in it, and what would the government be like without Tony Stark. And a lot of the stuff the government is doing is the stuff that Tony was afraid they would do and tried to protect people from. Mm-hmm. Like, all of the stuff with Wakanda is exactly what he was afraid of. Even if you look at like the way that they were using certain tech, the way that as soon as Riri popped up, they knew it was Iron Man tech. Yeah, I feel like in a lot of ways Tony Stark loomed pretty heavy over this movie, and so it was a good way to kind of continue his legacy by introducing Ironheart.
Wasn't MIT his alma mater?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And did he speak?
Also,
did he speak there at Civil War too, or no? Was that the?
Wasn't that? That was the school he was at the beginning of that, right?
I think so, but also, yeah, they showed MIT in the original Iron Man movie. That's where he initially built the arm that is like the comic release for most of the movie. That's where he first built his first robot, was at MIT. And so to discover Riri the same way, and that her big invention was a project from MIT, is a callback to him.
That's pretty cool. Nice.
There was something else I was going to... Oh, what was the name of Shuri's AI assistant in this again?
I don't know, but it's Trevor Noah that does his voice.
Yeah.
All right, so there's some interesting details. Like, Shuri and Tony, this is something Kevin Feige talked about in an interview. He's like, one of the background details that we're not really addressing in the movie is that Tony and Shuri exchanged a bunch of information. And so she's why he had a nanotech suit in Endgame and all that. and he might be why she has this new AI assistant that wasn't there in the first movie.
Right.
That's like her Jarvis. I just thought that was a really cool little detail to show that, like, her and Tony did exchange a bunch of different things and were able to learn from each other. I thought that was really cool without them really needing to overtly state, like, oh yeah, Tony taught me how to make an AI for myself. Like, she didn't have to say that.
Rio, that was AI's name.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I was going to say, they never explained why she had that, right?
No, but it was funny because, like, he was a little temperamental, just like Jarvis was. Like, she had to, like, almost yell at him at one point. Like, no, I wish you would just do the calculations I told you to. And he's like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, the other smart thing about that is now we've gotten to see that that is how Riri has been first introduced to an artificial intelligence, because she didn't meet Jarvis at any point. She wouldn't have met Jarvis. Yeah. And so I don't think they're going to go the same route they did in the comic where Tony is going to be her AI. I doubt very seriously that that's what they would bring Robert Downey Jr. back for. It would be cool, but I don't think they fit.
I could also see him being willing to do that, being like, what, you're going to pay me $1 million for 12 hours of voiceover work? Fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah, but, I mean, if they've got any more appearances on his contract, I don't think they'd waste it on a Disney Plus show. I think they would want to use it for a movie.
Oh, sure. I don't think he has anything left on his contract.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, when you're paying Robert Downey money, I don't know. I don't know if they would want to spend that on something like him just coming in and doing voice work or doing a hologram stuff for a while. Again, it would be cool because it's exactly how they did it in the comic, but I think she's going to have a different AI, and I think her example for what to build the AI is based off is probably going to be Griot.
Although it would be interesting if she somehow got a hold of the Friday software.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Yeah, I didn't know that was they brought back Tony in the form of AI in the comics. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Tony died at one point, and he was Riri's AI until he came back to life.
Oh,
he was also just his own Iron Man as an AI for a little while too. Like, he was just piloting a suit as the AI.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but I doubt they're going to do that in the movies at all.
No, I wouldn't think so.
I could only ever see him returning for AI or maybe some kind of multiverse bullshit cameo, but yeah, I think Robert Downey Jr. for the most part is probably done.
Yeah, I think if we see him again, it's going to be in something big like Secret War or something. That's a one-off.
Yeah.
Do you think they would have both him and Chris Evans back, or just one of them?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, Chris Evans did just say in an interview that he already misses playing Captain America. So
I think Chris Evans is different. I would actually not be surprised if Chris Evans makes a cameo in the upcoming Captain America movie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they never said he died, and they made a big point about it in Falcon and Winter Soldier about, oh, he's on the moon and all this other bullshit. So they kind of pay that off. So that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but man, I think they did a great job with Riri here. I thought the Mark I suit was kind of a nice way to do something similar to what Tony did, but also make it Riri's own. And I thought the suit that she makes at the end looked good. Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with the TV show.
Yeah, I think it's not coming out for another year, I think. So they got a while, but I was pleasantly surprised by that as well, because I heard she was in the movie, and I'm not, again, very well versed in the comics, so I wasn't sure what the connection was. But she ended up playing, she was pretty integral to the plot, and you know, the actress herself was great, and the way they set her up for what they have to come with her, I thought was really good as well. As far as like expectations and what people expected to see, and you know, Killmonger was something that people wanted to see, and we got that, and I thought the way they did that was great, as we mentioned before. I did see some talk from people that they wanted the debut of Doctor Doom in this movie with what was the name of the country that you referenced earlier, Phil? I forgot that he's from.
Latveria.
Latveria, yes. Were you one of the people that were expecting or wanting to see him in the movie, or were you among those that was like, it's not really necessary, let's hold off on that?
No, I think that they had a lot of stuff to do in this movie, and I think just tacking him in for the sake of would have been a bit too much.
Is I'm sorry, I was going to say, is the country near Wakanda? Like, what's the connect? Why would people expect that? That was my thing.
Well, Doom has like some storied rivalries with Wakanda and T'Challa, and I mean, it makes sense because they're setting up all of these like foreign superpowers in Wakanda, and now Talokan, and so it would have been nice during one of those scenes with like the geopolitical stuff for somebody to at least reference Liberia, but I didn't feel it was necessary.
Yeah, no, I thought it was fine that it wasn't in there, because you also don't want anything that's going to overshadow the movie itself, because I feel like that's the case with some of these movies where it's a good movie, but like this is the big scene. Like we literally just talked about that, Chris, with Black Adam, and the Henry Cavill appearance really overshadowed the entire movie, which is fine because the movie wasn't like anything amazing. It was enjoyable and good, but that was really the talking point. You didn't really have that with this, and I like the fact that maybe this will become a new thing, the norm going forward, where the post-credit scene isn't just in addition to the movie itself, but not everything has to change the entire complexion of the MCU. It was satisfying enough, and it was a really nice moment that it was like, oh, that's really cool, and it does set stuff up, but it's not as if they showed Doom in the fucking post-credit scene or something. I thought that was well done. What about you, Chris? Do you like the fact that the focus was on the movie itself and people aren't mentioning like, oh, this person showed up or that person showed up, which tends to happen a lot in the MCU?
Yeah, like I said, this feels like it stands on its own more than a lot of the other MCU movies. Like, it's definitely a sequel to Black Panther, but it's not necessarily carrying the weight of all the other stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Introducing Riri was great, but it like I said, it didn't feel like it was just tacked on like what we were talking about with Black Adam and the whole, like, Atom Smasher and Cyclone thing. Like, Riri felt important to the story because they needed somebody who was smart enough to build a vibranium detector to kick all this off, but it can't be Shuri.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that makes sense that it would be Riri, just some girl at MIT who's making it for a metallurgy class. Like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, it needed to be somebody that Shuri could connect with as well, and that would be why she wouldn't just hand her over.
Mm-hmm.
That scene in the dorm room when she's like, she picks up the thing and it just gets chopped in half, and then she just picks up a bigger thing. It's like, did you not just learn your lesson that you're not going to be able to fight this girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, I mean, even all of that stuff was great. There are several scenes from this movie there where something is picked right out of the first Black Panther movie and flipped on its head. And I thought the way that they flipped from doing that car chase scene where, if I remember correctly, aren't they chasing a police officer in that movie or somebody related to like the CIA? And then it's flipped on its head in this movie that the police are chasing.
In the Shuri movie, you're thinking of when they're chasing Claw, right?
I was going to say, was it Claw? Yeah.
It's Claws. That's what it was.
Yeah, and then in this, it's the cops chasing them instead. And I love that she did the thing with just poking the spear through the car and backing up. Yeah, like, that felt very similar to something they did in the first movie where a spear went through a car, right?
Yeah, they even did like the entire like Shuri controls the car and Okoye was like, nah, give me control of the car this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. One last thing for you guys. I know you mentioned it earlier, Phil, I think, but we mention it just generally, but the tributes to Chadwick throughout the movie, not just to the character, but to the human as well. Specifically the opening scene and like the Marvel rollout or whatever you want to call it, that intro was no sound. You just see just shots of Chadwick and all the other stuff he's been in was awesome. And then at the very end, the movie closes with just shots of him and pure silence, like no emotional sad music, like they're not playing whatever. Like they're just showing shots of him, and I thought it was I thought the way they did that, I mean, I'm sure it's been done elsewhere before. Personally, I've never really seen that or haven't seen it done recently. That was great and made it that much more emotional and impactful. So, Chris, I'll start with you as far as how you thought that came across and the tributes to Chadwick throughout the movie.
I mean, I thought that was great. That final scene with Shuri on the beach, like, just kind of remembering her brother, that was very beautifully done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this movie accomplished two main things. It was a fitting tribute to Chadwick, but it was also a way for them to establish that, like, we can keep these characters going and still honor him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, not just completely ditching the Wakanda stuff, like, is good. Like, just because they lost the Black Panther doesn't mean they have to lose all that other cool stuff they established in the first movie. So, it was done in a really well, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Tasteful?
It was done in a very tasteful way that it made you care about it and it made you emotional, but it also made you happy that the story can continue.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Do you share those same sentiments, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it had to have taken a real big toll on not just the cast but Ryan Coogler, especially Coogler, because he's spoken out more than once that Chadwick was his real friend,
mm-hmm.
and I still think one of the most courageous things about everything that Chadwick did was just suffering in silence and not telling people he was sick, but deciding, like, I want to make something that means something to Black people all over the world, that will inspire Black people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And Coogler going on that journey with him and understanding how important he was to the first movie, and not just as a leading man, but just everything about him. And I've seen people say, like, well, did they not know? And I saw someone else kind of debunk it by saying, I think if Marvel knew he was that sick, they wouldn't have cast him, because they want somebody that's long-term. And so, I mean, again, I think him being such a big part of not just that first movie, but getting to have a part of the Infinity Saga and coming out of the Infinity Saga into Phase 4, it would have felt very cheap to just recast him and move on, because he was so important. And so I think it was the right move to give him his tribute. I've only been in a movie theater for one of these movies twice now, where silence felt that striking, and that was at the end of Infinity War when the credits are rolling and it was quiet.
Yeah.
And during the moment of silence at the beginning of the movie, it was just a very beautiful thing to do that, broke the fourth wall and really gave him his moment to start the movie. And then ending the movie with his moment as well was just, I thought, was great. And I had to take a lot of conviction, Coogler, to go, I'm not doing this without my friend.
Yeah.
He was that important to this. I'm not just going to move on and act like he was just some guy that was our leading actor.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of respect for that. I think I think people should see that as commendable. I've seen people that wanted him to be recast that kind of write this off as a kind of where the corporation has this agenda. And I actually see it as the opposite. I think that for Ryan Coogler, that is the guy that is kind of a sight unseen guy with Disney. He only directed one movie with them, and they trusted him enough in the second movie to go, this is yours. If you don't want to recast him, we're following your lead. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something powerful about that.
No, definitely. Yeah, the beautifully bookended tribute to the beginning and ending of the movie really showcased that, and I think the comparison that you threw out to Infinity War at the end was a great parallel, especially because I feel like with that, especially also when Tony dies at the end of Endgame, but specifically at the end of Infinity War, like you're kind of mourning the loss of these characters that you've been watching for 15 years. But this, the character as well of T'Challa, Black Panther, but specifically Chadwick knowing what actually happened to him in real life and just everything he's done, not only for the franchise, but just in general, was really emotional. I thought the way they did that was fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
and I know we saw some of the funeral in the trailer, but the funeral looked beautiful, and I think it was just kind of us going along the ride with the characters of mourning not just Chadwick, but mourning T'Challa. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes this movie feel so real in a lot of ways, of going through the journey of mourning, not just with Shuri, but a lot of the characters in this movie. And I think that the great thing about it is it's not just that they took him out of the movie and just were like, oh, we're just going to move on. A lot of his story arc from the first movie continues in this movie. I mean, I thought one of the greatest things they did was that they really showed how much of an effect Killmonger had on T'Challa, because all of his decisions from the first movie on were based off of things he learned from Killmonger. I mean, even the idea to keep his kid a secret and learn more about the world and not be just isolated to Wakanda is something he learned from Killmonger.
Yeah.
I mean, Killmonger also looms very heavily over this movie. I think that even the stuff with Namor, like the parallel of Namor and his people deciding we're going to jump in the ocean instead of being put in prison, isn't a direct reference to Killmonger. I mean, all of it. Everything Shuri goes through. I mean, there's stuff like I think there's a line in the first movie where T'Challa meets his father in the astral planes, and he tells him, you know, I didn't do my job right if I didn't prepare my kid when I was away. And I thought about that the other day. I was like, oh, he did prepare Toussaint, even though he wasn't going to be here. He made sure to make a way for him even before he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's another thing, is one of the few people who knew Chadwick was sick in real life was his wife. And
Yes.
making Nakia, like, the only person in the movie who knew he was sick the whole time was kind of a beautiful connection that they were able to make there.
Yeah. I mean, even Shuri saying that, you know, I wish he would have told me he was sick. He waited till the last minute. I think, because, I mean, that's clearly a reference to that stuff as well. Yeah. It was just a great way to do this. And I mean, I know some people are going to have their thoughts on it. I do think that the role of T'Challa is too big to never recast him again. But I do like what they did with this movie. And I wouldn't mind if Coogler gets an entire trilogy where he doesn't recast. Like, if he gets a third movie and he decides, I don't want to do any more Black Panther movies, and somebody else comes in and recasts it, it's their vision.
Yeah.
I would be fine with that.
Yeah.
But I thought what we got was very good considering the real life circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, most definitely. The circumstances were I mean, it really defined this movie in a lot of ways, and they took what they had and they made the most of it, to say the least, as far as making a beautiful tribute out of it and just a masterpiece of a movie. So really closing out Phase 4 on a great note. Like I said, we'll talk about that on a later date once. I mean, the Guardians thing isn't really going to impact thing one way or another, but I definitely want to put a bow on Phase 4, and because we did one for the other phases. I know, Chris, you and I, when we did the other movies, we talked about all the other phases, so we'll have to circle back, talk Phase 4, the shows as well, overall. I know She-Hulk just wrapped up. That's the last show until, I don't even know what's next. The Guardians thing comes out soon, in like the next couple of weeks, but...
You're talking about the Christmas special?
Oh, yeah, the Christmas special. Yeah. So that comes out like in a week or so around Thanksgiving. But, Ant-Man, that's the next thing. That comes out in February or whatever. So,
boy, I was sitting watching the trailers for Black Panther, and I was like, Jonathan Majors is
I
killing
know.
it.
Yeah,
This dude was in like 3 trailers.
yeah, I know. What a fucking guy.
Guy
Yeah.
is killing it right now.
I don't know if I got the Creed trailer, but I got the other two, though. I'm like, man, that's just awesome. Like, good for him. He's killing it right now. That was
Yeah.
good. So.
Yeah. I can't say enough good things about this movie, though. I think that they created a big enough world that they could do a sequel and kind of stay in their isolated side of the MCU and not have to do anything else. I think that kind of says everything about the great job that Coogler's done, building a world in Wakanda.
No, definitely. Yeah, no, he's done a beautiful job in building it up and making it a fantastic franchise. And we're only 2 movies in, really, aside from the other stuff in Infinity War and him debuting in Civil War and whatever. And it's great. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here. I'm sure a third movie will be made when it happens. It remains to be seen. But, wild to think that the last one came out almost 5 years ago, and it still has, such an impact all these years later. And, I mean, this one had such a tough task, not only with Chadwick passing, but that first movie was so good, and it was so fucking big as far as just the impact that it had, not just on the MCU, but obviously so much deeper than that. We talked about that in our first review. And, we're speaking on Monday. The movie came out theatrically 3 days ago. But just looking at the money it made alone over this past weekend, the highest grossing November release ever theatrically, which is just incredible. I shouldn't be surprised, and I'm probably not. But it is impressive nonetheless. And it's really cool. And it's a great way to close out the year, too, as far as movies go. So it's very awesome to see. But
yeah. I mean, man, talk about acting. This cast did an amazing job. We all know Angela Bassett is a great actress, but I mean, her scene in the throne room, I mean, her scene at the beginning is just some of the best acting we've seen in the MCU.
Yeah, that line where it was in the trailer where she's like, have they not taken everything from me, or whatever it is. That whole thing where she was just really, serious and straightforward and yelling about everything that she's lost and everyone that, all of her loved ones and whatever was phenomenal. I mean, she was just fantastic. And then, like Chris said earlier, we lose her too. We lose Queen Ramonda. Like, this is her first time, like, just she's in a major role with T'Challa gone. Like, I'm thinking, okay, they're setting the stage for future stuff, and then she gets killed like 3/4 of the way through. It's like, holy shit! And it wasn't like in a bad way, like, oh, you fucking kidding me? Why would you do that? That was stupid. No, like, it was done in a way where I was like, man, like, I did not see that coming. And the way they did it was great. Like how she saved Riri's life. Like, she could have easily survived, but she survived. Yeah. She saved Ironheart. So I don't know. That was really cool.
Namor's line to her after he realized Ramonda was dead was cold-blooded.
My God, yeah.
What is it? I don't know. Prepare yourself, bury your dead. You're queen now. What?
Oh my God, that's savage.
Yeah.
He was great. I thought Namor was awesome. Very happy he survived, and I like the fact that kind of redeemed him too. And it's not like Shuri just killed him, because the whole story obviously was about vengeance and not leaning into that, and she didn't. She saved them and whatever. So, and I like the fact they had that little scene too after the fact where, I forgot her name, but I'm not even sure if they name her. But like his head warrior, the main woman on Namor's side, she's like, "Why would you do that? Like, why would you?"
Oh, Namora.
Namora, was that her name? Namora.
Yeah.
Okay, Namora. Yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I think that Namor was great. I think that he managed to nail all of the softer moments, like introducing Shuri to his kingdom and attempting to actually negotiate with her. But when he had to be, cold-blooded and the villain, he was great in those scenes as well.
Yeah.
I thought the way that they handled everything in their final fight was amazing. Another amazing tribute to Chadwick, by the way. And in their fight, because the way Shuri wins the fight is essentially how Chadwick becomes Black Panther. Because it's the same with Ramonda telling her, show them who you are. It's the same line of her saying that to Chadwick when he beats M'Baku in the challenge. And then, of course, telling him to yield. It's the same way. But Shuri's line is also Chadwick's line from Civil War. Of I've let vengeance consume me. I'm done with that.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, yeah, the callbacks to the first movie, that was really another reason why I liked it. Just going off what you said just now and earlier about there's so many themes in so many ways it carries over from the first film. And it wasn't as if this was it's a sequel, but it's not as if it happens right after the first one, like with Guardians or something. This takes place, the movie came out 5 years ago. It takes place probably, 5, I don't know. Because it's after the 5-year gap in Infinity War, maybe 7 years later. I don't know where it falls in the timeline exactly, but there's so many.
It's got to be at least 7 because Toussaint is 6.
Oh,
so
okay, that makes sense.
At least 7.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, even the way they introduced Toussaint is just
it was
great.
awesome. Yeah.
The fact that his name is Toussaint is also great. Toussaint is like a Haitian revolutionary.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's so many smart things they did in this movie.
No, it was really cool. And I like how they teased that too, where, was it Ramonda or was it Nakia that was like, oh, I have to tell you something about T'Challa, and then they get interrupted by Namor, and then...
it's Ramonda.
Was it Ramonda? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the scene where she's trying to convince her to burn her funeral card.
Yes, and then they get interrupted, and then we find out in the post-credit scene. So, yeah, I know that was great. They only had one scene, and that was it, and it was fantastic. Got the Rihanna song in there as well before the post-credit scene kicks, and before it kicks in, and that was awesome too. So, yeah, no, this was great. It just us talking about it right now makes me want to go see it for a second time. Which,
yeah,
I don't know. I saw Multiverse twice, and all those movies were great. We've talked about them all. I enjoyed them all. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but we'll get into it. This is probably aside from No Way Home, my favorite Phase 4 film. If it's not number 1, then it's easily number 2. But it was great.
Yeah.
It was really good stuff. I definitely got to go see it again. There's a lot of Easter eggs they included in there, specifically in regards to the first film, like you said, Phil, and callbacks and shit like that. It was really good. So if you haven't already seen it, obviously go see it. I can't recommend it enough. All of our praise doesn't do it justice. So this was a lot of fun breaking it down with you guys, and I look forward to doing it again soon. Probably, I'm sure we'll talk about the Christmas special, which you guys have seen the preview for that, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It looks great.
It does.
Yeah. Them adding Kevin Bacon in.
Yeah.
Struck a
I love that.
Yeah, it looks great. Can't wait for that.
Yeah. No,
I love that James Gunn tweeted months ago, the Christmas special is going to introduce my favorite character into the MCU ever. And then after the trailer drops, he retweets that going, my favorite character is Kevin Bacon.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, it just seems so weird when you think, like, out of all the characters that Phase 4 has introduced, like, over a dozen new characters, and I feel like Namor is just, like, incredible. Like, I feel like they couldn't have picked a better guy to play Namor. I think that they set up some really cool stuff. The underwater scenes were much better than I expected them to be. They were beautifully shot. Coogler's learned how to swim just so he could direct this stuff in the water. I just read that yesterday.
I saw that.
Oh, yeah, I read about that, too.
Yeah,
that's
what a guy. That's incredible. That's really cool. No, he did an amazing job with this movie, and there's a lot of cool Easter eggs, not Easter eggs, but like behind the scenes trivia from this movie that I've seen you talk about, Phil, and I've just seen elsewhere. That is, like I said, I can't recommend enough the podcast that he did. That I know that at least one episode came out of it, talking about this movie, the first one, Chadwick's passing, how much he knew, all that other stuff that we've talked about for the last hour. I think more episodes are out in January too, so I'm intrigued to see, check that out because he did an amazing job. But I love this, and it was a great final movie to end this Phase 4, which, Phil, I know you talked a lot about how this entire phase was about grief, and, people will give this phase shit and maybe not be as strong as other phases, but it had a theme. It is pretty clear in that. I thought they nailed it. And now to close it out, the last thing that we technically have in Phase 4 is the Guardian special, so it kind of ended on a bit of a lighthearted note. So
yeah, I think Phase 4, its main theme is legacy, and I feel like when you get to the end of Black Panther, it's very clear that that's the theme of this is legacy.
Yeah, no, most definitely, and I look forward to talking about that in our next one. The next time we chat will have to be about the Guardian special, but we'll probably have to do a 2-for-1 and talk about Phase 4 that same day because there's a lot to get into before we get into Phase 5 at the beginning of 2023. So this has been great, guys. People can check you out on the Twitter as always, of course. Chris, you're on Twitter at BR_doctor. Phil, you're on Twitter at PhilDL616. This has been great, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.